I never thought I'd get married again. Not after 42 years of burying the man I loved, raising 3 boys who grew into strangers, and watching the world spin on without me. But then came Harold, 78 to my 75, with hands like weathered oak and eyes that crinkled when he smiled, like he'd seen every storm and still believed in rainbows. He was the kind of man who fixed broken porch steps without being asked and left wildflowers on the kitchen table just because the morning was pretty. We met at the senior center's line dancing class. Me fumbling the 2-step, him steady as a heartbeat, offering his hand like it was the most natural thing in the world. We fell slow, the way leaves fall in October. Gentle, without fanfare, one afternoon at a time. Picnics by the lake, where he'd pack ham sandwiches and tell stories about his days as a welder in the Detroit factories back when America built things that lasted. Walks in the neighborhood where he'd point out the cardinal nests and say, "See that?" Nature's way of saying tomorrow's worth waking up for. And nights on my sagging couch, his arm around my shoulders, watching old movies until we dozed off to the hum of the refrigerator, waking only to kiss goodnight like teenagers. My son's David, the eldest at 45, a corporate lawyer with a corner office and a chip on his shoulder. Michael, 42, the middle one, a real estate agent whose charm stopped at the closing table. And little Tommy, 39, the baby who fixed cars but couldn't fix the resentment he'd carried since his father died. None of them approved. "Mom, you're 75, David said over the phone from Chicago, his voice sharp as a paper cut. "He's, what, some retiree scraping by on Social Security? You deserve better than a pity date." Michael laughed it off in texts. "Old man alert. Send pics? Me gotta vet this fossil?" Tommy was the worst, calling from his garage in the suburbs. "Dad wouldn't want this, Ma? Some geezer moving in on his family? It's disrespectful." Elle let it slide. Grief makes you quiet. Love makes you hopeful. I planned the wedding anyway. Ye a small backyard affair at my house in the suburbs of Detroit, under the maple tree where I'd buried my first husband's ashes 20 years before. White chairs borrowed from the church, a cake from the bakery on Gratiot Avenue, and vows we'd write ourselves because at our age, why bother with scripts? Harold wanted simple, just us, the minister from the senior center, a handful of his bowling league buddies, and my boys. "Family first," he said, kissing my knuckles. "Always." The day came soft and golden, late September, the air crisp enough for sweaters but warm where the sun touched. I wore ivory lace, simple, with my mother's pearl brooch pinned at the collar, the one she'd worn when she married Daddy in 52. Harold looked like a dream in his navy suit, the one he'd had tailored back in the 80s for a company picnic, his white hair combed just so, a boutonniere of yellow daisies tucked in his lapel because they were my favorite. My boys arrived late. David in his Armani slacks and a scowl, Michael nursing a hangover from the night before, Tommy slouched in jeans like he was at a cookout, not his mother's wedding. They sat in the front row, arms crossed, whispering as the minister started. I caught fragments over the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. "This is ridiculous." From David, "Look at him. Can't even stand straight." From Michael. Tommy snorted loud enough for the whole yard to hear when Harold fumbled his vows, his voice thick with emotion. "June, you make the quiet parts of life sing. I promise to hold your hand through every dusk, every dawn, till the good Lord calls one of us home." Laughter rippled from my son's row, sharp and mocking. David leaned forward, stage whispering, "Jesus, old man, get it together. This ain't a soap opera." Michael joined in, elbowing Tommy. Yeah, Gramps. Save the poetry for the nursing home. Heads turned. Harold's bowling buddies shifted uncomfortably. The minister paused, his Bible trembling in his hands. My cheeks burned hotter than the autumn leaves overhead. I squeezed Harold's fingers, whispering, "Ignore them. They're just hurtin'." But Harold's eyes dimmed, just for a second, like a cloud passing over the sun. He nodded, finished his vows, and we were pronounced man and wife under a sky that suddenly felt too wide. The reception was worse. In the backyard tent with folding tables, groaning under potato salad and deviled eggs, my boys turned it into their own private roast. David cornered Harold by the punch bowl, clapping him on the back hard enough to slosh the high C. "So, Harold, you got any war stories? Or were you welding lunchboxes while the rest of us fought for this country?" Michael piled on, glass in hand, slurring slightly. "Nah, he's probably got stories about bingo nights and early bird specials." "Hey, Pops, you ever win at shuffleboard? That's your battlefield, right?" Tommy, emboldened by the beer cooler, grabbed the mic from the DJ during the father-daughter dance, which Harold had insisted on sharing with me since my daddy was long gone. "Ladies and gents," he boomed, "a toast to Mom and the new stepdad. May he keep up with her shopping trips to the dollar store." The yard erupted in polite chuckles from the neighbors, but Harold's face, oh God, his face, crumbled like dry earth. He excused himself to the house, mumbling about the restroom, and didn't come back out. Elle found him in the kitchen, staring out the window at the party he'd paid for half of, his shoulders hunched like a man carrying the weight of 2 lifetimes. "Harold," I said, touching his arm. He turned, eyes wet, and for the first time since we met, he looked every one of his 78 years. "They're your blood, June. I get it, but damn if it doesn't sting. Hearing your own wedding turned into a punchline." I pulled him close, his shirt smelling of starch and the bay rum aftershave I'd bought him, and whispered apologies into his collar until the caterers started packing up. My boys left early David with a stiff hug and a "Sorry, Ma, rough day." Michael with a sloppy kiss and a promise to call. Tommy with a fist bump and nothing else. The yard emptied, the sun dipped low, and Harold drove home to his empty apartment across town saying, "Give me tonight, love. I'll be all right." He wasn't. The next morning, he didn't show for our usual coffee at the diner. His phone went to voicemail. By noon, panic clawed at my chest like a cat in a sack. I drove to his place, a tidy 1-bedroom in a brick building off 8 Mile, the kind with faded awnings and neighbors who waved from stoops. His truck was in the lot, but the door was cracked open. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint tang of old coffee. Harold sat at his kitchen table, surrounded by shoe boxes spilling yellowed photos, dog-eared letters, a purple heart pinned to a corkboard like it meant nothing. "Harold?" My voice broke on his name. He looked up, face gray as ash, and for the first time I saw the fracture lines of a life he'd never fully shared. "I can't do this, June." "Your boys, they see me as some relic, some joke. And maybe they're right. I'm just an old welder with bad knees and a pension that barely covers the light bill. You deserve laughter at your table, not mockery." I knelt beside him, gathering the photos like scattered leaves. Harold in fatigues. 20? Something and grinning in Korea, arm around a buddy who wouldn't make it home. Harold at a factory line, sparks flying like fireworks. Harold holding a baby girl. His daughter, gone at 16 to leukemia. The one he never talked about because the words stuck like burrs in his throat. Letters from her, crayon scrawled, "Daddy, you're my hero. Don't forget to smile today." And more? Commendations from the Army. Patents for welding tools that revolutionized Detroit's auto plants? A folded flag from his brother's funeral in Nam. You're no joke, I said, fierce as I've ever been. You're the man who rebuilt my porch so Elle wouldn't twist an ankle. The man who danced with me slow when the class ended and everyone went home. The man who loves me like I'm still 30 and unbroken. He shook his head, but I pressed on, unfolding the Purple Heart. This isn't a trinket, Harold. This is you, fighting for something bigger than yourself. And those boys, they're scared. Scared of losing me like they lost their dad. Scared of time running out. But they don't get to hurt you, to feel big. He touched the metal, fingers trembling. I walked away from wars, June. Walked away from losing my girl. Thought I could walk away from this too. But you're the first thing worth staying for. We sat there until dusk, painted the room indigo, me holding his stories like fragile birds. Him finally letting the weight shift. That night, we called my sons. Not accusations, but truths. David answered first, defensive. Ma, we were just kidding around. Lighten the mood. I put him on speaker. Lighten whose mood? David, mine? Harold's? Or yours? Because seeing your mother happy scares you more than seeing her alone? Silence, thick as fog. Then Michael. We didn't mean, and Tommy, voice small. We miss Dad, Ma. It's weird. I miss him too, I said, my voice steady for the first time in years. Every damn day. But Harold isn't replacing him. He's adding to us. And if you can't see that, if you can't honor the man who honors me, then you're the ones walking away. The line went quiet. Harold took the phone, his voice gravel and grace. Boys, I know loss. Lost my best friend in a frozen hill in 52. Lost my daughter to a sickness that didn't care how good she was. I weld things back together for a living, or I did. Metal, machines, hearts if you'll let me. Your ma's heart, it's the best thing I'll ever fix. Mock me if it makes you feel strong, but know this. I'm no old man. I'm the fool who loves your mother enough to stand in the fire for her. And if that's a joke, laugh all you want. Just don't expect an invitation to the encore. He hung up. We didn't hear from them for weeks. I thought we'd lost them for good, the way you lose keys in couch cushions. Annoying, but not the end of the world. Harold and Elle leaned into our quiet life. Tuesday potlucks at the center, Saturday drives to the cider mill, where we'd share a donut and pretend we were young. He taught me to weld, badly, but with sparks that made me laugh. I taught him to garden, planting tulips in the shape of Eli's initials from my first life, because some loves layer like soil, rich and deep. Then one rainy November afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened it to 3 umbrellas dripping on the stoop. David, Michael, Tommy, looking like boys caught out after curfew. Behind them, a truck idled, and from the bed, 2 men unloaded a massive oak dining table, polished to a gleam, with 8 chairs carved to fit like gloves. David stepped forward first, eyes red-rimmed. Harold, we talked a lot, went through Dad's old boxes, found letters he wrote to us before he died, about being brave, about letting go. We were cowards, mocking you to hide from our own shit. Michael nodded, sheepish. Yeah. And we Googled you, Harold. Turns out you're not just some retiree Korean war vet, Purple Heart. Invented that welding clamp they still use at Ford. Hell, you're in the Michigan Manufacturing Hall of Fame. We thought you were nothing, but you're everything to Ma. Tommy, always the quiet one, pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is from all of us. And the table, we had it made. 8 seats for family dinners. No more folding chairs and folding under pressure. Harold took the envelope, opened it, slow. Inside, a check, sizable for The Harold Harlow Scholarship Fund for kids like your daughter, fighting the fights no one sees. And below it, 3 apologies handwritten on linen stationery, each ending the same. Forgive us, we were wrong. Welcome to the family, Dad. Harold's eyes misted, but he didn't cry. He pulled them into a hug one by one, the kind that says, I'll see you, I forgive you. Let's build something now. The rain stopped as they carried the table inside, and by evening the house smelled of roast chicken and stories. David sharing case wins, Michael bragging about a flip house, Tommy talking engines like poetry. Harold sat at the head, steady as ever, passing the mashed potatoes and saying, Pass the grace while you're at it. Boys, we eat there every Sunday now. The table groans under turkey and tension and laughter that builds like good wine. My sons call Harold Pops, tease him gentle about his two-step, ask for stories of Korea and clamps and the daughter who made him brave. And me, I sit between them all, my hand in Harold's under the tablecloth, feeling the weight of 2 lives woven into one. Love isn't a battlefield, it's a dinner table. Room for mockery, for mess-ups, for men who weld hearts back together. And on nights when the maple tree outside whispers in the wind, I swear I hear my first husband chuckling, Took 'em long enough, June, but look at that spread, worth the wait. Harold squeezes my hand. To us, he toasts, glass raised, the old man and the bride who made him new. And we drink deeply to the reckoning that came not with fire, but with forks and forgiveness to family, finally fitting around the table like it was always meant to. Because some vows aren't just for the wedding day. They're for the mornings after, the sons who stray and return, the husbands who stay through the storm, and in the quiet suburbs of Detroit, under a maple that's seen it all, we live them. One bite, one story, one steady hand at a time. The end? No. Just the good part, starting. We never did get around to a honeymoon. Harold said, We've got the rest of our lives for that. And I believed him because when he said things, they sounded like vows you could build a house on. Instead of Hawaii or Niagara Falls, we took Sunday drives in his old Ford pickup, windows down, classic country station crackling, and called every mile a honeymoon. He'd pull over wherever the light looked right, spread a blanket in the bed of the truck, and we'd eat bologna sandwiches while the sun set over cornfields, or the lake, or the back parking lot of the Kroger, if that's where we happened to be. He always kissed me like it was the first time, slow and certain, like he was still amazed I'd said yes. The boys started showing up more than just Sundays. David first. He drove in from Chicago one Friday with a bottle of 30-year scotch and a sheepish grin. For Pops, he said, handing it to Harold like an apology wrapped in amber. They sat on the porch until 2 a.m, talking about war and fatherhood and how you learn to be brave when you're terrified you'll fail the people counting on you. I pretended to sleep, but I listened from the kitchen window, tears sliding sideways into my hair because my eldest son was finally learning how to be soft. Michael came next, hauling a smoker the size of a small submarine. Figured the old man needs proper barbecue, he declared, setting it up in the backyard like a monument. Harold spent the whole weekend teaching him the difference between patience and laziness when it comes to ribs. By Sunday night, Michael was calling him Pops without irony and crying into his coleslaw because the meat fell off the bone like forgiveness. Tommy was the holdout. He'd text, he'd wave from the driveway when he dropped off grandkid presents, but he wouldn't cross the threshold. One Thursday in February, the temperature dropped to single digits and the pipes in his garage apartment froze. He showed up at 10 p.m. with a duffel bag and a six-pack, eyes red from more than cold. Harold met him at the door in his robe and slippers, took one look at the boy, 39 going on 15, and said, "Guest room's made up. Beer's cold. No speeches tonight." They drank in silence until Tommy finally whispered, "I was scared if Elle liked you too much, it'd mean Dad was really gone." Harold put a hand on the back of his neck the way fathers do. "Son, your daddy's in every joke you tell, every carburetor you rebuild. Liking me doesn't erase him. It just makes the table bigger." Tommy stayed a week. He never really left after that. We started traditions nobody planned. Every March 17th, the day Harold's daughter would have turned 50, we drove to the cemetery in Ann Arbor where she's buried. Harold brought yellow roses. I brought the teddy bear she slept with until she was 12. We sat on the ground and told her, Daddy told her about the new grandbabies she'd never meet, about how her scholarship fund had sent 6 kids to college this year, about how he finally learned to dance without stepping on toes. Then we went to the diner where she used to steal his fries and ordered a chocolate milkshake with 2 straws because that's what they did when she was small, and the world still made sense. Every July 4th, the boys brought their families, wives who'd learned to love Harold's terrible puns, grandkids who called him Pop Pop, and begged for rides in the truck bed. We shot off fireworks and the neighbors complained about and ate watermelon until our shirts stuck to us. Harold always saved the biggest rocket for last, lit it with shaking hands, and whispered, "This one's for the ones watching from the good seats." We never had to ask who we meant. The vineyard trips started by accident. One fall, David closed a big case and wanted to celebrate somewhere quiet. I mentioned the miracle vineyard in Michigan I'd read about, the one where the grapes spell names. Harold's eyes lit up like a kid's. "Let's go taste forgiveness," he said. We loaded the truck with coolers and quilts, and all 3 boys, now 4, counting Tommy's wife, boys and their broods. We got there at sunset, walked the rows in awed silence, and when the owner pressed a bottle of Eli's Vintage into Harold's hands and said, "This one's for warriors," my old man cried in front of God and everybody for the first time since Korea. The boys stood around him in a half circle like they were shielding him from wind that wasn't there. When we got home, Harold hung the empty bottle from the maple tree with fishing line so it caught the light and spun slow, throwing tiny rainbows across the porch all year long. He called it his medal. Years folded like quilt squares. Harold's knees went, then his hips, then the cancer came calling. Quiet, polite, the way polite things kill you. The boys moved heaven and earth. David pulled strings for the best oncologist in Chicago. Michael turned the downstairs den into a hospital room with windows open to the yard. Tommy built a ramp so wide you could land a plane on it. They took shifts sitting with him, reading the sports page aloud, arguing over who made better chicken soup. Harold would squeeze my hand and mouth, look at him go, like he was watching the Lions finally win a Super Bowl. One spring evening, when the maple was just leafing out, he asked me to help him to the porch swing. The grandkids were chasing fireflies. Somebody's baby was laughing in that hiccup way babies do. Harold patted the seat beside him, the same way he had the very first night he asked me to dance. "Junebug," he said. He'd started calling me that somewhere around year 8. "I need you to promise me something." "Anything, love? When I'm gone, don't let the boys turn me into a saint. I want them to remember Elle burned toast and sang off-key, and once backed the truck into the mailbox because I was too busy kissing you to look." Elle laughed through tears. "Deal. but only if you promise to haunt the coffee pot so it never runs out." He grinned, the same grin that stole my heart at 75. Already arranged, he died 3 nights later, peaceful, with my hand in his and the sound of our family laughing in the next room. The hospice nurse said she'd never seen anyone go looking so damn happy. We buried him under the maple right beside my first husband because Harold insisted room for both of us, June. Love's not a zero-sum game. The boys carved the headstone themselves. Harold James Mallory, 1927 to 2025. Beloved husband, Pops welder of broken things. He kept the light on. The funeral was standing room only. Half the senior center, the entire bowling league, every kid who ever got a scholarship with his name on it. My sons stood shoulder to shoulder in their good suits and told stories until the minister had to cut them off, or we'd be there till Christmas. That night, the boys carried the oak table out to the backyard, set it under the maple, and we strung with the white lights Harold loved. We ate leftovers from the reception, drank the good scotch David saved, and told the kind of lies about Harold that are really just love in disguise. When the moon came up full and low, the swing started moving on its own. We all saw it. David's wife gasped. Tommy's little girl pointed and said, "Look, Pop-Pop's pushing." Michael started laughing and couldn't stop, and Neil just leaned back against the cushions that still smelled like him and whispered, "Took you long enough, old man." The swing kept rocking, slow and steady. Long after the wind died, it still does. Every evening at dusk I sit there with whoever shows up, sometimes all 3 boys, sometimes just one grandkid with a scraped knee and a story, sometimes nobody but the dog and the fireflies. The coffee pot never runs dry. The light over the porch stays on even when the power goes out in storms. And if you listen close on quiet nights, you can hear 2 old men laughing about something only they understand, while a little boy who never got big runs circles around the maple shouting, "Higher, pop, pop, higher. Love I've learned is less like lightning and more like tree rings." One quiet circle every year, growing wider, stronger, until the trunk can hold the weight of every name that ever mattered. And ours? Ours could hold the whole damn world. So we sit, we eat, we laugh until we cry, and cry until we laugh. And the swing keeps moving, gentle as a heartbeat, carrying all of us, the living, the gone, the ones who finally learned how to come home, into whatever comes next. Because Harold was right. Family isn't blood. It's the light you leave on for whoever's still trying to find their way in the dark. And ours? It's burning bright enough to be seen from the stars.